All right. Welcome, everyone. We're going to have everybody start filing in now. Thank you for joining our webinar about how to get your story on the air and track its impact. It's a really exciting topic that I think can get neglected quite a bit in PR. So excited to talk more about this, get all of this great insight from our experts today. If you want to drop in the chat where you're joining in from, it's always fun to see where everyone's calling in from. We often have people all over the place. So if you want to share that while we're waiting for people to join. All right. Yes, we have our guest Susan in Fairfield. I'm in Illinois. And while we give people a few more minutes to share where they're calling in from and join, we'll actually start off with a quick poll so that we can understand a little bit more about how you currently use broadcast and what you're looking to learn. So if we go to this next slide here, the question is, how often do you incorporate broadcast media into your PR campaigns? So we'll launch some pretty general options here just to get a better gauge on that. So we've got never, but I'd like to, rarely, sometimes, frequently, and all the time. So just a general idea here. All right, so I'm seeing our chat is not quite working right for the guests here. If you would like to ask any questions throughout the session, you can use the Q&A. It's a separate tab there. But we'll go ahead and launch these poll results so we can see what we're working with for broadcast. So we launch those. Okay, so all right, most say frequently. That's actually different than I would have expected. We have sometimes in second and all the time in third. All right, so we have some broadcast experts in here, but we're excited to teach you more about what your questions might be on here. All right, so let's get into the good stuff. We'll get to the next slide here. So we're going to talk with our guest today about how to get your story on the air and track its impact. I think broadcast is such an amazing channel that often is misunderstood, somewhat neglected, kind of like who still watches TV? Why will my story matter there? Those sorts of questions. So we're excited to talk about all of that today. Moving into the next slide. So super excited about our guests that we have today joining us. I'm Sam, the head of content at Propel from our end, and then we'll have Julia hop in a little bit to give you more insight about how you can use Propel to track your broadcast coverage that you get. So she'll be joining us in a little bit. We have Susan Aitkin. She's the Director of Global Partnerships and Partner Marketing at TVeyes. So she's currently the leader of their initiatives with different partners for broadcast monitoring. TVeyes is a leader in global broadcast and podcast data solutions. She's the primary point of contact for growing their portfolio across API partners and supporting the CCO and managing the partnership channel. So thank you so much for joining us, Susan. It's awesome to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And then joining us in a second here, she's gonna need another minute to hop in. We'll have Lisa Rozner. She's currently interviewing someone at their base in New York at CBS. So she's running a minute late here, but she'll be joining to share all of her inside scoop about what she looks for in a broadcast pitch, which is really exciting. And what maybe is an immediate no, an immediate yes, all of that great information. So we look forward to having her in a minute here. Moving into our agenda, we have a few great topics for today. Susan will start by sharing more about why broadcast is so important. From her expertise, we'll get into some of our new data. So we studied almost 18,000 broadcast pitches from major outlets. So we'll talk about what we found there and then get into broadcast with Propel. And then if you want to tweet about what you learned, we have hashtag Propel Live for any key takeaways that you end up having. All right, so a little background about Propel before we get started. We are headquartered in Tel Aviv with teams based around the globe in New York, London, Miami, and so forth. Propel was founded in 2019 with our mission to democratize PR tech for the masses. So if you don't know, it's the first PR tool built by PR people. Its co-founder, Zach Cutler, ran his own agency for several years and was always looking for better tech to manage all of their campaigns, journalist relationships, team productivity, and business outcomes. There was no CRM for PR at the time, so he sold his agency and built Propel, which is now a global leader in PR management, PR workflow, insights, and analytics. So we're really proud of our modular approach for packaging and pricing. You only pay for what you need, which is awesome. And we now have 500 customers, including leading agencies and brands like Real Chemistry, Microsoft, and NPR. So we will get into the session now. All right, so Susan will start us off by getting into some data about the importance of broadcast over other types of outlets, as I mentioned in the beginning, and maybe why we should be using broadcast more often.
Awesome.
All right, there we go.
Thanks, Sam. So I'd like to just kind of start by emphasizing the size of the audience and increasing the growing amount of content that's being seen on the local level too. So we all have TVs in our home. So I don't think that it's a surprise for anybody here on the call to know that the prevalence of TV viewing in the home is still very, very high and very frequent and very much a part of daily lifestyle for Americans and global consumers as well. Specifically within the last 2 years with this increasing work from home, we've seen an increase in the number of folks watching TV from home, and specifically the amount of time that's spent with television, and then also just kind of the need for localized content as well, again, specifically relating to the COVID pandemic and kind of the need for getting more localized information through their local affiliates, such as like the local Fox and CBS kind of outlets within their hometowns. So we have a fragmented media landscape, online, social, print. Broadcast is a huge part of that. And so when you're looking at your entire kind of piece of the puzzle in terms of where you're pitching content, broadcast is a really important element. Not only is there a large audience tuning in to watch TV, but they're also sharing that content on their social. We live in a very multi kind of media source environment where you're watching TV, but then also on your phone at the same time. And so a lot of what you see on air is then kind of shared on Twitter feeds, online, and so forth. So the element and kind of connection between broadcast, online, social media is very tied in together. And that is also true for radio as well in terms of the audience size. As we shift kind of back to work, we see continued use of radio in terms of a news source. And again, that localized element of being able to distribute localized content to those local homes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. We'll move into some other points. This next slide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, so again, with a large audience, an influential kind of media source, and then also one that's kind of growing in terms of the volume of content, so the hours that are dedicated to news content. The power of broadcast coverage is also one that can be attributed to one that's trusted. So there's a high level of trust, especially in local outlets, so that what viewers are seeing on television is perceived to have a reliable kind of context behind it. They perceive it to be trustworthy. And so the message is coming across as genuine and one that's real. And I think that's really important nowadays where that's kind of coming into question now in terms of the authenticity of the message, and is it true or is it not true? Broadcast still has a very a great reputation in terms of the trustworthiness of it and how accurate a message can be when viewing it through that outlet.
Absolutely. And I think every PR person is on that mission to restore trust, as it's been kind of impacted over time. And broadcast does have such a great track record with that. So such a great outlet for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you're thinking about pitching your spokesperson or, your CEO, any sort of figurehead for your company, broadcast is a really key outlet in terms of landing that interview, that broadcast segment, and really providing some, basically some like cred to the company and saying like, oh, this guy is legit. He's on TV.
Definitely. And from there, it can only trickle down. Like you get a broadcast segment, and I'm sure there's digital to come and everything that follows, like you mentioned, with social and mentions and all of the rest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
And the third really powerful element of broadcast as a media type is that it's very timely. So when it comes to breaking news, there's no one that really beats broadcast. And again, like tying in the trustworthiness of it too. It's news on the fly. They're not burdened with, editorial processes at newspapers and online outlets as well. So it's in real time. You get it on the fly. And so in this kind of 24/7 news cycle that we live in, broadcast is really key in terms of being able to provide a consistent, trusted message, and one that people pay attention to. So if there's any sort of crisis situation going on, folks are turning on the television. They're looking at their local outlet, to see what like the local issue is, whether it be on the political side or if there's a breaking news story. That's one of the first outlets that folks turn to in their home. And with the integration with Propel, the broadcast data and search results that you get are very timely too. So not only is it happening in real time, but you're also getting the search results in real time too. And we'll go into that a little bit more, talking about the specific integration with Propel.
Thanks so much, Susan. And we have Lisa, if everyone can see, she just got in here just in time. So thank you so much for joining us today. She is fully at work in New York as a broadcast reporter. So you can't get better than that.
And I guess that could go to the timeliness, right? So always kind
timely, of very timely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Susan. We'll get into some of the data that we found as well now, about specifically broadcast pitching. So what we did here, we studied almost 18,000 broadcast pitches that went to a handful of your major outlets: BBC, CBS, naturally, ESPN, ITV, NBC, and NPR. So just a nice arrangement there. And we'll get into these next slides to see what we found. So looking at just the immediate open and response rates, we found the broadcast open rate to these outlets was about almost 38%, which is actually a little higher than the overall average from the same time period, which is interesting. And then the response rate was quite a bit lower. So we saw 1.47%. So any immediate reactions here? I know, Lisa, you're just getting situated, but do these numbers surprise you, or what are your takes?
You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. No, it doesn't surprise me. I think there's always curiosity. I try to open as many emails as I can, but once it's too long, it's just too much trouble. I just move on. So I can see why the response rate is low.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And my follow-up was, does this correlate with your own experience? Like, would you say your personal open and response rate kind of reflect this?
Yeah, I mean, I think my response rate's a little bit higher. 1% is pretty low, but yeah, I would say it's relative in the sense that I probably open a lot, but I don't respond because let's say each one took 30 seconds to respond to and I get 50. I mean, it's a lot of time out of the day. So it's just easier to delete them or just keep going so you can get through everything that you need to get through plus your work for the day.
Right. Especially if you're looking for the best stories or the most important news, just filing through those, I'm sure takes quite a bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And they tend to be long. So it's not a clear cut. This is the story. And it's like, oh, it's too much work. You want it laid out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't blame you. This actually goes really well with our next point about the pitch itself. So I hear you're saying they're too long and they're not clear. So we saw actually quite a drop off once we got to the pitches that were over 1,000 words for broadcast, which I would hope so. And then you can see these white points here, the white columns are the response rates. So you can see over on the left side, we're getting some better results. And once we get to 500 to 1,000, not so good. So we're seeing what you're saying reflect in the numbers there. What would be the most ideal pitch? Like, what are the pitches that you see that are a good length, clear, and all the rest for broadcast?
I would say the best pitches are like 3 sentences, but I not kidding you, I never get those. Probably to meet you in the middle of what's more realistic, maybe something that's 2 paragraphs or 3, where the first one pretty much tells me what I need to know, and then the second 2 support that in case I want more information. Those are the best ones. And also when the subject line is just as clear to the point as possible, like story about blah, blah, blah. Like, a lot of times it's media, like press release. It's just a lot of subjects say press release. So it's almost like saying, hey, this is going to come from someone in PR and it may or may not be worth your time. So, when it's to the point, but again, it's hard because I know when you're dealing with your clients, you have a lot of information that you want to impart, and it really is, it's an assignment to break it down and tell it to a reporter, just like you would your friend. And I think a lot of people don't take that extra step. They just kind of put in a lot of minutia that the clients want them to have. And that's where the disconnect falls for the journalist, because I don't have time to understand and pick out where's the nugget of the story.
That's such a good point about the subject line. That's like a subject line of, I'm sending you an email. Like, yes, I'm assuming so.
Right.
And I remember last time we spoke with you, one of your biggest pet peeves was, as a broadcast reporter, you receive pitches with no visual element. And that's something that I've heard PR people aren't even quite thinking about, but you can't run those stories even if you want to. So considering that, besides the visual, or if you want to elaborate on why that's so important too, in those 3 sentences, would you say it's different from other outlets people pitch? Like, what does a broadcast reporter need to know right off the bat from a pitch?
Yeah, well, this sounds cliche, but why is this story different from all other stories? Why is this a story and not a free advertisement? Why is it newsworthy? What are my viewers going to gain out of it? Here's why you're going to see something you've never seen before, or I'm going to give you a look at something that is going to be very interesting. We'll take you behind the scenes. We'll show you how this maple syrup is made. We can take you to the farm. We can introduce you to the farmers. Like, it would be helpful. Like, a lot of times I just get these content pitches. Oh, I have this woman. She's a domestic violence abuse survivor. Amazing story. But I need help. Like, I need help with what are the visuals that I'm going to use to tell this person's story. You know, she's a survivor. She put out a book. She has photos from when she was growing up. Maybe, you know, I can't offer you the visuals that you might need, but I'm happy to brainstorm with you. Just even addressing it sometimes is nice. So I hope that answered the question. I feel like I'm getting off on all these tangents.
The more tangents, the better. I think
Okay.
people are really excited to hear what you're looking for. I mean, who wouldn't want to be on CBS broadcast news?
Right.
So that's awesome. And I'm hearing a lot of just principle best practices, but also, like you're saying, literally paint the picture. Like, it's going to be on TV. It needs to be engaging to watch. And the visual elements, we had a question pop in the chat here.
Yeah.
Like, what does a visual look like, which you kind of just got into? It really needs to tell the story. So
right. Right. A link to a video. Yeah, links to videos are good. But it's just easier to literally write out for me, just because it takes less time. We can supply you video, but we can also allow you to get video of XYZ, because we like to get our own video. It's preferred that we do that so we can experience it, because sometimes the quality that an agency might have is like very high quality and it's beautiful, but it's just so obvious that we didn't shoot it. And we like to, you know, I'm the reporter. I want to get the experience myself if possible, depending on what it is. So I think just elaborating, we can get you visuals. We can invite you to this location and you can come with your camera person and film this, or we can provide you photos of XYZ. Hey, here's an idea of what it would look like. And then give me like a JPEG. So like pictures are easier than videos, but it's not a bad supporting, like, it's not bad to provide a link, but it's preferred to just explain it.
Interesting. That's, I'm sure, really helpful for everyone here, and maybe not obvious unless you hear the experience on your end and what that ends up being like.
Right.
So you mentioned length was kind of one of the biggest turnoffs to bad pitches. Are there any other types of pitches where you receive it and you're just like, no, hard pass?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Length is it really is a huge factor in that. The other thing is, if it's not lengthy, it's just confusing. For example, I got a pitch from a nonprofit who I know just from past stories does really good work with putting up like free community fridges in communities in need, but they partnered with a corporation. So this press release was very top heavy with all about this partnership with the corporation. They're going to give X amount of proceeds. And I had to go like 3 paragraphs in where it said, we're going to be putting a new fridge in this community. It's going to happen at this time. And I was just confused, because had the press release just said, we're opening a new community fridge, it's going to be in this location, the community really needs it. And then, by the way, we have this partnership. They've been great. They've given us a lot of money. Hooray. That would have been like easy to understand. I would have tried to pitch it. But I was just confused because I don't want to pitch it the wrong way. Like, it made me to believe that this corporate partnership was the story. And if I didn't make it a huge part of the story, then I wasn't getting it. So I just skipped it, because I think when you have a story like that, where you have a corporate partnership, it's better to, like, that shouldn't be at the top. That should be at the bottom, because that to me just screams like free advertising, basically. And that's what we are trying to avoid. Do you want me to answer these other questions?
We can save them for the end, so we have plenty of time.
Sure.
But that's already such a huge point. Like, if it's confusing, it's gonna get skipped. It could be the best story that there is, and if it's not clear, it's not gonna be covered. So
right. And too many points. too many points people try to make. I think just stick to 1 or 2 points and leave it at that. It just,
Totally.
it gets to be too much to try to understand it all.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. We'll get into our last data point, which of course, this is always going to depend. We just have this sample of 18,000 pitches, which is a lot, but you know, it can always vary what topic is trending and who's pitching it and all the rest. What's your take on topic relevance when you're looking at pitches? Do you have favorite topics that are just go-tos, or does the topic even matter so much as the pitch being well written? What do you think here?
So for me, because I'm in local news, the topic doesn't matter because I cover everything. I would say so that being said, when it's too much of a niche topic like technology, I get a lot of these, we just launched this startup and we're going to change the world. And it's like, I don't cover tech. So if you're going to change the world, you need to explain to me why everyone cares, not just people in the tech field. So it's not so much the topics, it's how technical the pitch is. Sometimes I get these like food and drink. Sometimes I get, oh, we just launched this new ice cream, or we launched this new dessert. Like, that's not really what I cover. I mean, my stories are about people and human interest. I like food. I like covering food, but I need people to help me out and attach a story to the food. It can't just be, take a look at this, because I'm not a magazine and I'm not like a weekly where I'm highlighting events or new things happening in the neighborhood. It has to be appealing to people in multiple states. Health and fitness, like every one of these topics is fine. It's just that they need to be made relatable to an entire region and a wide audience. Like health and fitness, I've been getting some pitches lately. Here's why abs are the best exercise you can do. That's too broad. It's like, okay, like what am I supposed to do with this? That's more of something I would say for maybe a magazine, like a health magazine. So it's okay to have subject matters, but just explain why everyone cares about an automobile story or any of these.
Absolutely. This is really great. Thank you so much for all of that. I see the questions firing in, so
I'm not even looking. There's going to be a lot.
We'll hopefully get to them all. That'll be at the end, so don't sign off just yet. You'll probably get your question answered. Sure. But we're going to move in to a new part here where we really get into what monitoring looks like. So we have Julia here from Propel, product manager, to walk you through that and really explain how you're going to get the value after the coverage.
Yes. So, hey, everyone. I'm Julia from Propel. Hey, Susan. Hi, Lisa. So, can you guys see my screen here?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we, for the past few years, have partnered with TVeyes to kind of keep up with our broadcast monitoring suite. And so here, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a preview about how broadcast monitoring works in Propel. It's really easy, pretty straightforward. We also have online monitoring and social, as you can see up here at the top. And so basically over here on the left, we have all of our different alerts. And for those of you that maybe run PR agencies and you have lots of clients, when you go to create a new alert, you can kind of set it up with a name and then associate it with the account or client that the alert is associated with. And then it's going to bring up a screen that looks something like this. And so here you can see you can choose the market, and then down here we have the query. And this can be kind of really complicated or really simple, depending on what you're searching for and what kind of stories or mentions you're trying to monitor and bring in. And of course, anybody that has never done this before, if you get broadcast monitoring with Propel. We're really hands-on, and we try to kind of help you create these queries, because I know it can be a little bit daunting at first. But this is just an example. Usually it's like and not, operators, ors, pretty basic Boolean query searches. And then once
I would add, sorry, Julia, I would add to that searching for broadcast coverage is very different than online or print coverage, in that it's spoken language, and so the way that people talk on television is not as articulated, or maybe the full name of an organization as it would be written in a print article. And so adding in different variations of your company name, whether it be the entire full proper name of it, or maybe just the acronym of it, is always a good idea when setting up your search alerts.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes if someone sets up an alert with someone's name, often in the transcription, it'll be like a little bit off, or it sounds, if someone mumbles it a little bit. So we'll add in like 3 different variations of the name, just so it can pull those in.
Yeah, like Brian or Brian.
Yeah. And so once you click finish and you've of course set up your query, it's just going to start pulling in those mentions from here on out. And so here is an example of an alert, and here are the clips. And so you can see we're pulling in radio segments and also TV. And from here within Propel, you're also able to tag your mentions, color code them. Here's some examples like that. And then if you actually click into one of the clips, it's going to obviously give you the segment and then also the transcription down here. And you can see in green, this is where your query is actually being pulled within the transcription. And then also we can give some program info, viewership, including local market and national. And so these clips are stored in Propel for 30 days. And then after that, they'll kind of disappear unless you want to archive it and save just a minute or two. You kind of just set the start and end date, click share or save, and then back in your feed, you're able to kind of see those mentions that you want to have forever. And also you can share a link that you can send to your clients or your colleagues, whoever. They don't need to have a Propel account, and they'll just have, this is an example, access to that clip and that exact same info that you had before. And that's kind of it. Am I missing anything obvious, Sam or Susan?
I would just say in terms of, the timeliness of the data coming in, it's anywhere between 2 to 3 minutes behind broadcast. So as you set up your search queries and you get mentioned in the news, you'll start seeing that in your real time. So it's very timely. The alerts are great for setting up. If there's any sort of crisis issue going on, you'll get it right into your inbox from Propel. So you don't have to actually go in and kind of hover over this environment here to see if it's coming up in news stories or anything. You'll get alerted to it. So I think that the all-in-one kind of opportunity with Propel is a really key reason to look at broadcast within this platform, and obviously it looks great too. So
thank you. I also just came up with one other thing I should show you guys. If you were monitoring maybe your client and a few competitors, or you just wanted to compare maybe industry trends, what people are talking about in the media, you can also compare your different alerts. And check out volume over time, share of voice, volume by type, kind of see TV versus radio. And then these are interactive too. So you can kind of click into those graphs and see the mentions that it's referring to.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that as well in terms of the use case. So even if your clients are not currently being mentioned on broadcast, but you want them to, using this as a research tool in terms of, what is this reporter covering? Where are my competitors being mentioned? Just overall as a research tool, and kind of crafting your strategy to have broadcast coverage is a great use case for adding broadcast to your Propel subscription.
Yeah, definitely. And if anyone has any questions about how it works within Propel, of course, drop them in the chat, or you can even email me. I'll drop my email in the chat and we can set up a time and I can give you like a full-on demo. But this is just a really quick little overview. So thank you.
Thanks, Julia.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Julia and Susan. That was great to see the inside scoop if anyone was curious about tracking their broadcast. I know it's already hard enough to track all of those different digital articles and mentions, and it just becomes so much trickier if you don't have some kind of platform as far as tracking the radio and television and figuring out what happened from there.
Yeah.
One more
Broadcast is
question
pretty
too, Susan, if you want to share just a little bit about what you hear from your broadcast clients, like what is the biggest value point there? Like, is it way harder for them to track broadcast otherwise without something like this?
Yeah, so I was just going to go into that. So broadcast is pretty interesting in that you can't Google what was said, on a TV segment. You have to have a service like TVeyes integrated into a platform like Propel in order to be able to search all that content. And so really the power with the integration with Propel is that you're able to search thousands of channels within a single platform. And so it's really aggregating all of those sources into a single platform and being able to search against it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And just a few resources as we go to wrap up. If you're curious to learn more about anything we've talked about, Propel related, or that we haven't even talked about, like journalist relationships and all of the rest, feel free to book a demo with our team. You can find that at our website right there. And then something I'm really excited about, we have a new guide following this session, which goes over all the different research findings from the broadcast pitch study, and then some of this amazing advice that Lisa and Susan have been able to share about managing that whole process, which I'll be sending out the link with the recording to everyone who registered. So stay tuned for that as well. And then finally, we'll get into some of these questions. I know that's what everyone's excited for. So starting, we have quite a few about pitching and what you're looking for, Lisa. So get ready. One we have are, so if it's an event, would you prefer a full-blown press release about this event or more of an advisory?
More of an advisory. Just what's the event? Where is it? When is it? Which you'd be surprised. Oftentimes, I really have to dig for that information. And then just at the bottom, quick 3 lines, like, we're going to be launching this. So-and-so will be available for interviews. We can get you in and out at such and such time, and we can provide parking. Parking is huge in New York City. So that's also something that helps to know.
Yeah, that's a great tip there.
Yeah,
that's something I think not a lot of people would think.
I would not have. Yeah,
right.
Propel, hashtag Propel Live. Give Lisa a parking pass.
There we go. Okay, let's see. Tips on follow-ups. So if the first one missed the mark, when do you want to receive one? How would you want it to be framed? Do you even want one?
I mean, people make it easy for me when they're just like, hey, are you interested? You can just say no. I'd really appreciate it. So I've done that before where I'm like, yeah, sorry, it's just not something I would cover, and that's it. But to be honest, I've stopped doing that because sometimes I do that and then it's an opening for, okay, well, like, can I get feedback? What is it? How about this? How about that? Unfortunately, there's just so many more people in PR than there are journalists. It's very saturated. So it does get to be time consuming. If I give everyone feedback on their pitch, it's like, they might as well hire me, it's just, I can't do it. So I think with following up, it's just better to, if you want an answer either way, just say, hey, following up, are you interested? If not, totally cool. Just would appreciate an answer. And then if you get an answer, just, okay, thanks. Like, hope I can send you another one down the line, or You can ask, like, is there anything I could do differently? But if you don't get a response, just let it go. That would be my tip.
Totally. We heard this kind of echoed when we spoke with Karen Weintraub from USA Today. She said that's the problem. Like, she feels like she can't respond almost sometimes, because then it's a floodgate, and no never means no. Like, maybe just taking that, accepting the no, and that being it would make it much easier for you to be comfortable following up.
Definitely. Yeah. And sometimes the feedback is not simple, like some of these press releases that I gave examples of. If I try to explain why that community fridge and the corporate thing isn't, it's a deeper conversation. Why do you have the corporation in there? What are they doing for you? Like, it's all about time. The more, if you can make a direct pitch, it's easier for me to give direct feedback. It's like, yeah, we don't cover restaurant openings. We need a human story. So that's an exchange that kind of happened recently. Someone pitched me a fashion line. I said, well, this is great, but we don't cover new fashion lines. We need a person attached to it. Then they said, oh, well, it was recently the anniversary of this country's independence, and this designer is from that country, and maybe you want to do a story about that. And it ended up being a story, but it's that kind of, like, getting it that we can't always assist so much.
That makes a lot of sense. Definitely. Time is of the essence.
Right.
Our next one. So who would be best to address a pitch to for the sake of broadcast? It's kind of different from just sending it to one journalist or maybe one editor at an outlet. Would it be editor, producer, executive producer, still just your name?
Right. Well, it's interesting because I saw one of the questions asked, is there a difference between pitching local and national? And speaking to local, there's no rhyme or reason. I mean, I think you have to look at it as, in a newsroom, there's several people that are making the final decision. And when you send it to the assignment desk, it's the most easy, straightforward way to hopefully get it in front of them. But obviously the assignment desk gets a lot of pitches. Now, when you send it to a reporter, the reporter's also then just bringing it to the assignment desk and managers. So it's like another avenue to get to those decision makers. But the answer is it doesn't matter. There's no the assignment editor, this EP, the executive producer, the reporter. It just, every workplace is different. Reporters are encouraged to pitch stories at most places, so it's not a bad idea to pitch to a reporter. But I think it's important to be transparent. Like, if you're pitching the reporter, tell them you've pitched also their assignment desk, but you're hoping that the reporter can give you, you understand the assignment desk gets a lot of emails, and you were thinking maybe giving it to someone who could give it a little more attention would be more productive. But I've had situations where I get the pitch, everyone else in the newsroom gets a pitch. I think I'm bringing in this amazing story, and then it turns out they already know about it and they talked about it, and that just makes everyone look bad and be upset. So that's another thing, little tangent there. But yeah, with national, I feel like there's more division. Like, you have booking producers. Someone asked about experts, like, that's where you're going to go. The booking producer, they're responsible for getting guests on the show to talk live with the anchor. I think reporters are encouraged to pitch national, but there's a lot more department things going on. So with local, I don't know, it's a tough answer because, like I said, there's no direct path. I understand people trying multiple avenues, but if you do that, just be transparent. Like, let them know you've pitched their colleagues.
Yeah, similar to just pitching like all of the journalists at a newsroom. Like, you're gonna waste all of their time if they all try to or the story independently. So
Mm-hmm.
really good advice. Awesome. And then we actually have a few monitoring questions that came in. So does Propel track segments on streaming platforms? Their understanding TVeyes is cable broadcast focused.
Yes. Yeah, I think Julie answered this in the chat. So
oh, God.
No worries. The majority of our content is TV and radio, so like traditional TV and radio that you would find through your cable subscription. However, we are expanding to OTT content, so I'm not sure if that's specifically the category of streaming that you're interested in, but we are expanding our source base to include OTT content, and again, like just kind of the diversification of where viewers and consumers are getting their news and broadcast content from is supporting our expansion into those new type of non-traditional TV sources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I didn't see the chat on the bottom. My bad.
No worries. I just saw it too.
Another question also for TVeyes. Someone asked, how many stations does the system cover?
Yeah, so within the Propel integration, we're looking at the US, UK, Australia, and Julia, help me if I'm missing out on any others. So globally, TVeyes covers almost 3,000 channels. So your specific, account setting would be based on the country and market that you're interested in searching for.
Gotcha, thank you. And then this is kind of more interesting on our end as well, that you would know more about. We had another question about the types of companies using broadcast monitoring. So of course, super helpful for agencies, but would you say agencies are a large chunk of your user base, or do we see a lot of other companies too?
Yeah, so when I say like A to Z, it's literally like the local, food bank, charity organization using broadcast monitoring to capture their coverage to literally like the White House and multinational organizations. It is anyone and everyone that has broadcast coverage, an interest in monitoring broadcast coverage or trying to secure broadcast coverage and using it as a research tool. So everyone, literally, from local mom and pop shops all the way to your huge agencies and, brands, political organizations, everyone is using it.
Awesome. And would you say the research component is more popular than kind of the follow-up aspect of tracking the coverage they received, or do you actually see more people using it as a research tool?
Yeah, so we have seen a growing interest in our data, TV as broadcast data for research purposes. So how the media is covering a specific story, whether it be a topic, policy. So it's expanding outside of that traditional, like PR space where you're just monitoring for a specific company or person to actually looking at an entire issue and how that may impact your company. So the focus is not so much on the specific company, but more so on the story itself.
Nice. And we've heard feedback about that increasingly on the PR side too, is just using those sorts of tools to then inform your pitch and inform your story before you're kind of chasing it so that you're staying relevant too to these larger issues. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is another pitching question we've got. So suppose the reporter really didn't get the advisory or press release. If you don't follow up, you may never know. So I guess in that instance, it just goes back to your response as far as, can we get a yes or no? Did you see it? Maybe that's the only way.
Yeah, and they can try. There's no harm in trying. My thought process lately has been, all right, I could reply no, but then is this going to lead to a whole back and forth? But I think if you're honest, hey, I just want to make sure you got it. Are you interested? If not, no worries. Just trying to keep track. And I would be understanding if someone writes me like that. And I would just say, yeah, not interested. Thanks. And then if they engage me, I might just start deleting after that. So that's how I would. There was another question that someone asked about tips on pitching experts. Oh, I kind of addressed it, but the problem with pitching experts is if I don't have, it goes back to the thing we were talking about, visuals. Like if someone's an expert on COVID safety, I mean, right now it's not really, people are talking about removing masks in different public places, for instance. So my question is, what would I have to, what's the story? So a lot of times I get these experts, but people don't give me a story that goes with it, how I can localize a story or someone affected by that issue. For instance, I got a pitch, oh, so-and-so's an expert on foreclosures. Okay, do you have a family that's gone through a foreclosure that's willing to go on camera? Like, I think that extra step before you pitch would really make a difference, because that stands out to me, you know, a family that's been through foreclosure, and that is more of a story than the expert, you know, then I would get the expert too. But a lot of times that's what's missing, those other elements. And someone asked about exclusive. Does it help to put exclusive in the subject line? And the answer is no, unless it's really truly an exclusive, but like a good exclusive, like you know, we want to invite you behind the scenes to see this, or so-and-so's been in, like it's someone that we know has been embroiled in like controversy and they're going to speak out for the first time. But if it's like exclusive, how we're going to make cupcakes, or I've gotten like exclusive, look at this holiday gift basket, it just honestly turns me off, and it makes me not want to deal with them because it's disingenuous.
Yeah, I think it's been abused at this point. It's kind of like the boy who cried sheep. It's not really an exclusive.
Right, exactly.
A little manipulative too. I think, I mean, as Propel, our goal is always like, how can we bring everyone together in this, and not kind of battling against like, how can I get them to do this? Like, how can you get them what they need is what we need to be thinking about, and not just throwing exclusive in the title.
Right. And someone said reporters don't have beats anymore. I worry that I'm not sending enough background. I mean, yeah, I think it's safe to assume reporters don't have beats. So that's why you have to break down your subject matter, just like we break it down for the viewers, like 4th grade level. This is what it is, and here's why it matters.
That goes with another one of these questions we received. What are the challenges to accepting a pitch that may be objectively important versus what people are traditionally more likely to watch or listen to? Does it all come down to the written pitch, which it actually connects to what you were saying about how much the human element plays in. It sounds like if people want to get broadcast coverage, it needs to be a large story that connects to specific people, or a very kind of feature warm element there that can be relatable.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of times, like I did a story on hunger recently, and then all of a sudden I got all these pitches about, do you want to cover this about hunger and that about hunger? And usually the ship has sailed. I mean, you know, that's how local news is. Like, it's a lot about timing too. Like being aware, depending on what you're pitching, like getting ahead of the, like if there's a national headline, such as recently there was something about student loans, and you know the president's going to make an announcement, like that's the time to reach out to the local people before the announcement. Hey, I know this announcement's coming. If you're going to cover this, I have so-and-so ready. I can get them on Zoom. They can do in person. Because after it happens, it's usually like too late, or we're covering it in real time ourselves. So timing is very important.
Absolutely. And we'll go ahead and start to wrap it up. We see a huge thank you from Jen in the chat, which I echo to both of you. This was so insightful and such an awesome conversation. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope it was insightful from a pitching and a reporting aspect about what you can be doing with broadcast. So on this last slide, we have some contact info. If you have any questions for me, you can reach out personally. I'm happy to answer them. The recording will be available to everyone that was here. I see a few questions about that. And yeah, again, thank you everyone for being here. Lisa, Susan, it was awesome.
Thank you, Sam, for hosting.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Have a great day.